Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Speaking About Speaking with me, Jackie Goddard. And as you can see, I'm all on my lonesome today, sat here in my kitchen at my table, surrounded by bits of paper, and really happy to be here on what has turned out to be quite a grey day outside. But I hope you are all well out there listening or watching. This is supposed to be an interactive half an hour. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about confidently and persuasively talking and communicating to your audience. And that's quite a big subject. So if you've got any questions, any comments, anything you'd like to share, then please go ahead and stick some stuff in the comments. So yeah, interact with me and I will answer them as I go along. But today I'd like to start with just some tips around being confident. How do you speak confidently to your audience? Where do you start? Where do you begin if you are feeling a little bit nervous, or you've got a talk or a presentation coming up and it's not something that you're used to doing, or perhaps you are, but you still get nervous and uncomfortable every time you have to step in front of your audience? Well, I'm going to start with just kind of 5 bits of advice, tips, top techniques that I have that I share with my clients and the people that I speak to at the speaker club and wherever else I come across people and I'm working with them. And the first one is always, always, always make sure you believe what it is that you're saying. Because if you don't believe what you're saying, then your audience won't either. And that sounds strange because surely when we speak, we do believe what we're saying. But so often, especially in a work situation, if you've been asked to present for work, then sometimes you may have been given your presentation the day before, an hour before. You may not have had the time to really prepare what it is that you're saying, look at what it is that you're saying. And when you come to speak the words, they're not yours. And you don't really understand them as yours. The way that they're written, the way that the script has been given to you or the presentation is laid out for you, the slides are laid out for you, is not how you speak. It's not what you're comfortable with, the way that you use your own language and your own personality to share your knowledge and your experience. So if you are presented with a situation like that, make sure you have the time to kind of put it into your own words so that you actually really do believe what it is that you're saying. And that goes for anything that you're doing, but specifically if you're given somebody else's words to speak. It's like if you go, and I always use this example, if you go to see an amateur production of Shakespeare, it will be wondrous. There's probably somebody in the cast that you know, and you're there for them, that you are happy to be them for them. But so often the amateur dramatic society haven't had time to really understand the words. Shakespeare is quite difficult language to get your head around. So if you've not had the time to delve into it and make it your own, then it's very difficult to speak it so that the audience understand it. On the other hand, if you go to see Shakespeare performed by the Royal Shakespeare Company or a professional Shakespearean company, then actually you will believe every word because those guys have been given the time and taken the time to really understand what it is that they're saying. So it's the same thing when you are presenting for your work, is make sure you understand every single word that you're speaking. So believe what you're saying. Fabulous to have Christoph here. Hi, Christoph. Happy birthday, by the way. Don't say anything you can't confidently back up with research, knowledge, or collateral. Absolutely. And yeah, that comes down to really knowing your stuff and believing what you're saying. And I've got a question here from Mark. Mark Masters, hello. How can you let your guard down, tell a joke, have fun, but still be taken seriously? You have to be confident in your content, and this is what it always comes back to, that comfortableness on stage, being able and confident enough to be able to let your guard down, tell a joke, interact with the audience, only comes when you are really comfortable with your content. And that means believing it, making sure that they're in your words, your personality, and that what you're speaking is what you believe. And if you don't, then it's very hard to let your guard down and interact with the audience, because you are afraid of being caught out somehow, of being judged. Because if you aren't comfortable with what you're speaking about, then the audience can feel that. And that's when you put your guard up. And that's when you get nervous, because there's that worry that you're going to get caught out somehow. So in order for that not to happen, and for you to be comfortable on stage speaking to an audience, not just on stage, but anywhere, in a room, in a networking space, across a dinner table, as long as you are comfortable with your surroundings, with your environment, and with the content that you're speaking, then you should be able to play with it. And I think I'm going to come on to that a bit later when I sort of start talking about memorize to improvise, which it will come on to under be prepared. So thank you for that, Mark. So yeah, that leads me on then to breath. Speech is breath. We can only speak because we are able to breathe. And so every time your thoughts transfer into speech, and that the connector is your breath. So whether you are breathing to calm your nerves or you are breathing to support your voice, it needs to be something that becomes part of your regular practice. So there are box breathing techniques out there, circle breathing, I think some people call it. There's other breathing techniques that will really sort of center your nerves, get all of those butterflies into formation, or those sort of butterflies you get in your tummy. They will really calm down your central nervous system and get you back into focus, so that you can focus on what it is that you're talking about. So breath is really important, just to calm your nerves. So if you take a deep breath in for the count of 4, and then as you breathe out, take a nice slow breath out for the count of 8. Those numbers are up to you, but just as long as you are taking a shorter length of breath in and a longer, more controlled breath out. It might be in for 3, out for 6, however that feels for you. The box breathing technique is breathing in for 4, let's say, and then pausing for 4. So hold your breath for 4 before you breathe out for the count of 4, and then hold your breath again for 4. And quite often, just to give you a visualization to go alongside that, so you can really calm yourself in a nervous situation, is if you imagine yourself lying on a beach and listening to the waves. As the waves come in for the count of 4, they stop for the count of 4, then they go back out for 4, stop. And that's a really nice way of visualizing yourself in a really calm place. When you are breathing for performance, it's a lot deeper, the breath. So you are using what we call belly breath. You're using your diaphragm, which is that dome-shaped muscle that's attached to the bottom of your rib cage, so that when you breathe in, you feel your stomach expand. So we're not just using the chest to breathe, which is what we do when we breathe every day, naturally, without even thinking about it. We use just the top of our lungs, vegetative breath. It's right at the top of the lungs. But if you carry on breathing like that, when you step in front of an audience and you're nervous, that breath will go. So what you need to learn to do, and this needs to be a regular practice, because this is where you're working out all of the muscles of your breathing apparatus, is you need to learn to use your belly breath. And I will put links to those videos that I've got that can demonstrate those for you. So as you breathe in, your stomach expands, your shoulders are nice and relaxed, and then you control the breath out. So imagine blowing up a balloon inside your body. And then as you breathe out, imagine that you're squeezing the neck of the balloon and just controlling the breath out. And the more you can do that, the more you'll exercise all of those muscles, and it will become second nature to breathe like that when you are ready to support your voice. It's a breathing technique, belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing or pyramid breath. Any of those breathing techniques, they were all the same breathing technique. They will really work out those muscles and get you used to breathing correctly for performance. So that's the breathing method that singers and actors use. So that's breath. Number 3, be prepared. And that is practice, 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 and practice again. There's no getting away from it. You can't wing it if you're going in front of an audience and you want to impress them. If you want to be persuasive, if you want to create an impact, inspire, motivate, all of those things. You need to know what it is that you're talking about backwards. So you need to be able to speak it in your sleep almost. So once you've got your talk or presentation, you know what it is that you're talking about, then you need to practice it and practice it and practice it. Speak it out loud to another human being, preferably, just to get rid of some of those nerves and make sure that what you're saying is understandable. So don't be afraid to do that. It's not just about repeating it in a mirror. It's not just about recording it and listening back, although that is a very good idea. Is just get used to it so that when it comes to it, not only are you not going to forget it, but you can then let your guard down a little bit. You can then start interacting more with the audience, and it can be a two-way thing. You can be a little bit more playful. This is where memorize to improvise comes in, because when you are so comfortable with your content, then that's when you can start playing. And that's when you can, as Chris Anderson from TED Talks says, you get out of uncanny valley. If you have, if you work to a script, which some people do, I don't recommend memorizing a whole script, but maybe going from story to story and creating a flow. Once you've got that in your head, you will get to a point where you'll be speaking it, but you'll still see the words or the flow in your head. And that then you just come out, it's almost robotic. It's not natural. It doesn't feel natural, doesn't feel comfortable. You want to go past that point. So you'll get to that point, you think, oh, great, I've done it. I can remember it now. But you need to practice even more to get out of uncanny valley and over the other side into the place where you can literally speak it backwards in your sleep and be so comfortable with it that you can play with it. So yeah, that's the big one. Be prepared. Number 4, vocal variety. Now, this is where your personality comes in, really. Don't be afraid to put some personality into your content. You know, this is about, it's about the audience, but without engaging the audience with your own personality, you're not going to draw them into your talk or your presentation. So use your voice. It's your greatest tool. Use all of the elements of your voice to create an engaging presentation. So think about your pitch. You know, are you pitched at one level? Are you talking very high and you don't move from that? Or are you talking very low? Just make sure that there's sort of some variation in the pitch of your voice. Don't stay all at one level, because it gets very monotonous, and that's when people fall asleep. And also think about your tone. Your tone is really kind of how you say what what you're saying. So are you wanting to be authoritative? Are you wanting to be inspirational? Are you wanting to be passionate? There's sort of areas in the voice. Again, it's a 5 elements of your voice thing that I got from a TED talk by a lady called Barbara McAfee. And she explains it really, really well, where in your body this voice comes from, so that when you're speaking, you can go through your presentation and make sure that there's lots of vocal variety in there. There's lots of places where your voice might come down quite low, so you're almost whispering to the audience, so that you're drawing them in, so that they want to sit forward. That might be something that's really passionate, that sort of comes from the fire in your belly. It might be something that you're speaking from your heart. You want to be warm and flowing. So have a think about where that voice comes from. What is it, the tone that you're trying to speak with at certain points in your presentation? And if you can go through your talk and pick out those bits where you might be able to add a little bit of variety in your speech patterns, to add that vocal variety and really engage your audience with your voice. And then number 5, lastly, storytelling. It's so important. And people kind of go, oh, I don't want to tell stories. Why should I tell stories? I'm all about the data. Without stories, your data won't stick. Or an audience, no matter how they, we all learn in different ways. We all take in information in different ways. For some people, it's very visual. For some people, it's all about the auditory. For some people, it's all about the kinesthetics. It's all about movement. So you try, and once you get to know your audience, is find out what those stories you have in your experience that will benefit them. and then tell them in such a way that they will want to listen to you. I mean, we've been telling stories. The human race has been telling stories since the world began. It was the only way we could communicate with each other, to learn and pass on information, pass on historical stories from one generation to the next. Around the campfire, all of that sort of stuff. We need to tell stories. It's how we draw on other people's emotions, how we get them to connect with us. So don't be frightened to tell a story. You'll find that if you are telling a story, then you won't need to think about your vocal variety. The pitch and the tone, just from telling the story, will be there. I mean, you think about the last time you told a friend, a family member, a story of something that had happened to you at some point during that day. You can't tell a story without vocal variety. So find those stories, not the ones that are self-indulgent. These stories are not for you to tell your audience just to make you sound good, or to be self-indulgent. Those stories are for the audience. So only use the ones that are going to be beneficial to them. And they don't need to be from your own experience. But if you can find a story to hang that point that you need to make on, then your audience will understand it better, they will resonate more, and they will find you more relatable at the end of the day. So find those stories. They are really important for maximum impact and engagement with an audience. As Maya Angelou says, people won't remember what you said, they won't remember what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. So tell them a story and make them feel something. So those are my 5 tips to speak with confidence, certainly. So believe what you're saying, breathe, be prepared, use vocal variety, and the last one, tell a story, engage with a story. So if anybody's got anything that they want to add on that point, then do add a comment or ask a question now. But what I'm going to do now is move on to how we can be persuasive in our communication. And this is, it's Andrew Thorp, fellow speaker and friend of mine, fellow podcaster too. Andrew Thorp says we are all in the persuasion business. And actually we are, whether you're speaking for your business or speaking to a family member, in a relationship, with a work colleague, wherever you are, the intention is for you to be persuasive. Now, I Googled this because I know, and this is this is the discussion that I'd love to have actually, is how you guys think persuasive communication can tip over into manipulation, maybe. I mean, I'm really only talking about positive persuasiveness when you are communicating, and that's obviously what I advocate. But there's a fine line, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But in researching and just having a look at what persuasiveness is, I found a few bits on Google. One was, persuasion involves influencing others by presenting compelling arguments, appealing to emotions, or leveraging social dynamic. So yeah, influencing others by presenting compelling arguments, appealing to emotions, or leveraging social dynamic. So your thoughts, please. And then the other thing here, which is absolutely true when it comes to persuasive and confident communication. It seeks to win people over through honesty and transparency and respect for autonomy. I mean, it says here, in contrast, manipulation relies on cunning strategies that may undermine trust. So understanding these distinctions is crucial, obviously. So that's what I'd love your opinion on. And then in terms of rhetoric and the way we communicate, and the way, specifically when you're putting a talk together or a speech together, I love this thing about ethos, pathos, and logos. They're all modes of persuasion used to convince and appeal to an audience. And you need these qualities for your audience to accept your messages. So number 1, ethos, is your credibility and your character. This is your ethics and your moral beliefs. Okay, so these are your values that you're putting across in your presentation or your speech. Pathos is your emotional bond with your listeners. So this is where that emotional connection comes from. This is how you're going to make your audience feel something. So this is where you'll make them feel compassionate or pity or sympathy or whatever it is that you want them to feel. That's where you use your pathos. And logos is obviously the logical side of things. So that's your rational argument, your stats, your facts, your data. So with those three things peppered throughout your talk, you're really going to persuade your audience of whatever it is that you're trying to present to them, whether it's a talk, whether it's a product you're selling, whether it's a sales pitch, or whether you're trying to get your 5-year-old to eat some broccoli. You need to put all of these things in place. So that's what I'd like to talk about now. You just have a look in the comments. Anything coming up for anybody in that? No? Okay. So number one, understand your audience. Again, it all comes back to them. You need to know who it is that you're talking to and why they should care. So have a think about who your audience is. Make sure you do your research and find out who it is that you're talking to. So sorry, I've got so many bits of paper around me at this point. Put your audience in, find out who they are, go and do some research, go and have a look at why they are listening to you and what it is that they are going to benefit from listening to you for. So do some research, find out who they are, what are their beliefs. It's crucial to actually find out what it is that they are there for, what are their needs, their desires, their motivations for being there. And then you can tailor your message to them. Keep it simple. Make sure that what you're relating to your audience is as simple as possible. Maybe make sure it's in bite-sized chunks. And if you are relaying a lot of data, that's where the stories come in. That's where the stories help to really get your message understood. Build credibility and trust. Now that's where your knowledge and understanding comes in, because if you understand what it is that you're saying and you are totally knowledgeable in your expertise and what it is that you're trying to put across to an audience, then that's when they are going to begin to trust you. So make sure that you know your stuff, you know what you're talking about, because the more they trust and respect you, the more likely they are to be persuaded by your message. And create a compelling story. So when you are putting a talk or a presentation together, make it compelling. If you really want to influence people and persuade them to your way of thinking, then make your story compelling. Find those experiences in your own life or in other people's lives that you can use as examples. That will really resonate with your audience and make you relatable, make you trustworthy, and really compel people to want to know more. Understand that when you are putting a talk together, you might only have 10, 15 minutes. You're not going to get all of your knowledge and your credibility into that 10 minutes, but your message needs to be compelling enough that once your talk is finished, people will want to come and find out more. They'll want to come and ask you questions. So make sure that your story is compelling. Use vocal variety, vivid language, vivid visuals. Make sure that everything that you're putting in front of them is compelling enough for them to want to know more. And when you're building rapport with your audience, find out what kind of state they're in. If you're talking one-to-one with a person and they're a bit angry or they're a bit miffed at something, then maybe that's not the time to actually ask them or pitch them a sale. See if you can can't speak today. If you can mirror their body language, the way that they're reacting, put them into a more comfortable state with you. So you build rapport, you find a connection with them, so that they begin to know, like, and trust you. It might be that you have something in common. There's a word I love called homophily, and homophily means to find a connection with another person, a shared experience. So in your research, it might be that you find out that they went to the same school as you, or that they have a dog. There might be a mutual connection that you can build that rapport around, because once you have rapport with somebody, then you can ask them relevant questions and they feel like you are like them. So I think it's Seth Godin that says something like, people like us like stuff like that, or there's a connection that we can build with people, that builds rapport, that makes them feel comfortable with us because they look at us and see themselves. So think about how you can build rapport. And persuasive language and rhetorical devices. Now, persuasive language and rhetorical devices, like ethos and pathos and logos, are rhetorical structures that have been used since, going back to ancient times, and the orators back in the day, the philosophers back in the day. So there are lots of rhetorical advice, like repeating words, like using metaphor, all of these things. There's a fantastic speech writer that I follow on LinkedIn, and I've read his book actually, called Simon Lancaster. I don't know if anybody out there knows Simon Lancaster. I'd love to get him on the podcast. He's fantastic. So go and find him. He's doing a series of posts at the moment called something to do with tea. I can't remember what it is, but there was a couple of rhetorical devices that he's taught me today. Anadiplosis is when you repeat the end word to start the next line. So you'll hear, when you hear these sort of rhetorical devices, you'll recognize them. So this one, the example he gives is from Yoda, from Star Wars, which is: fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. And so by starting the following line with the last word of the previous line, it builds connection, and it builds power, and it builds energy, and really kind of lands that point that you're trying to make. Antithesis is another one, like to be or not to be. You kind of you've got those contrasts, to be or not to be. There are lots of rhetorical devices like that you can use that really make a presentation or a talk memorable. So if anybody out there is watching the replay or would like to know more about me or Power to Speak or anything that I work with, then please do go to powertospeak.co.uk, and all of my services and everything that I do is there. And I'd love for you to connect with me. Come and ask questions. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very, very happy, even if you're watching the replay, for you to put some comments in and come and have a chat with me about anything that I do. I love talking about this stuff, as you can probably tell. And if you wanted to join my subscribers, come and subscribe to my newsletter, because every other week I send out a newsletter, and it's full of tips and techniques to help you speak confidently and persuasively to whichever audience you might be speaking to. So it might be that you speak from a stage, it might be that you want to be putting a TED talk together or something similar. Then you are more than welcome to subscribe to that newsletter or come and find me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for being here today. I've really enjoyed talking about persuasiveness and confident communication. And I would love to connect with you. So I'm going to say goodbye now if there are no further comments. And I will see you next week when I have Rebecca Leopard with me, who is a social media and all-round fantastic person. And I heard her speaking on the You Are the Media stage a few weeks back. And I've heard her speak before, and I'm very impressed with what she does. So I think you'll enjoy that. So I will see you here again next week. Bye.